What if I told you this? What if I told you that this book was written over a period of 1,500 years, was created by about 40 different authors, survived dozens of empires, was officially banned under penalty of death, and yet became the most widely distributed book in human history? Would you believe all of that describes a single text? And now the main question. How can a book written by a shepherd, a king, a fisherman, and a prisoner in different centuries, in different countries, read like one unified story? Is that even possible without a central design? And it gets even stranger. Its first lines were written before Rome even existed. Its last lines, when Rome ruled the world. It began to be written before the invention of paper, before universities, before most modern languages. It emerged in the deserts of the Middle East. Today it has been translated into more than 2,000 languages. And here's the question that refuses to go away. Why did this particular book survive everything? What is in it that made people try to destroy it and fail? 40 authors, 1,500 years, one story. The Bible was written by approximately 40 different people, between the first and the last author, about 15 centuries. They never gathered together. They never agreed on a structure. They never edited one another. And yet through all its books runs a single line, from the creation of the world to the hope of its restoration. How is that possible? This is where the story of the Bible truly begins. Who really wrote the Bible? If the Bible is so unified, who stands behind it? One genius? A secret council? A religious elite that carefully planned everything? No. The authors of the Bible were people separated by centuries. They did not know one another. They could not coordinate their texts. They had no shared editorial board. And that is what makes the story even more astonishing. Among the authors were Moses, raised in Pharaoh's court, yet the one who led a people out of slavery, traditionally credited with the first books of the law. David, king, warrior, and poet, author of many of the Psalms. Solomon, a ruler considered the wisest of his generation. The prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, who wrote during political crises, wars, and exile. Now move to the first century. Matthew, a former tax collector, despised by society. Luke, a physician and educated historian. Paul, a Pharisee who once persecuted Christians and later became one of the main authors of the New Testament. Peter, a simple fisherman from Galilee. This was not one social group, not one profession, not one class or educational level. And yet, despite different personalities, cultures, and centuries, one central thread runs through their writings: the story of the relationship between God and humanity, the fall, the promise of salvation, and the hope of restoration. How is that possible without a single overarching design? How was the Bible written? Imagine a world without printing presses, without copy machines, without electricity. The earliest texts were written on papyrus, on parchment, treated animal skin with ink made from soot and plants using reed pens. Every copy was made by hand. One mistake and weeks of work could be destroyed. Jewish scribes known as sopharim developed an extraordinarily precise verification system. They counted the number of words. They counted the number of letters. They knew which letter stood in the center of a book. If they found a mistake, the scroll was destroyed. It sounds unbelievable, yet this precision explains one of the greatest archaeological shocks of the 20th century. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, texts over 2,000 years old, and they matched the modern Old Testament text with astonishing accuracy. That means the text was transmitted for centuries with remarkable precision. And here is the logical question. In a world without technology, without printing, without centralized control, how did the text survive so accurately for so long? From this moment begins an even deeper story, the story of the Canon and the selection of books. Imagine a world without translators, a world where each culture lives in linguistic isolation, and suddenly a text appears that moves through languages, empires, and eras without losing its message. The Bible was written in 3 languages: Hebrew, the language of ancient Israel. Most of the Old Testament was written in it. Aramaic, the everyday language of the Near East. Portions of Daniel and Ezra were written in it. Greek, the language of science, trade, and international communication. The entire New Testament was written in Greek. Then came the turning point. In the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC, the Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek. This translation became known as the Septuagint. Why does this matter? Because Greek was the global language of the Mediterranean world. That meant the scriptures moved beyond one nation. The first Christians used this translation. The New Testament authors quoted from it. Without it, Christianity might have remained a local movement. With it, it had the opportunity to become global. And on this foundation, the New Testament was born. How did the New Testament emerge? The New Testament did not fall from heaven in finished form. It formed in real time. Between approximately AD 45 and 100, texts appeared that would change history. The earliest were Paul's letters, not abstract theological essays, but responses to real problems in real communities. Then came the Gospels, accounts of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The last book traditionally written was Revelation, filled with symbols and hope amid persecution. And here is the key point. All of this was written in a time of danger. Christians were persecuted, accused of disloyalty to the empire, executed. In AD 303, Emperor Diocletian ordered all Christian books to be destroyed. Scriptures were burned publicly. Churches were demolished. It seemed like the end, but only a few decades passed, and large manuscript codices containing almost the entire Bible appeared. Codex Vaticanus, Codex Sinaiticus. Not fragments, not scraps, but major collections of texts. What does this mean? The text survived an attempt at total destruction. And here is the unavoidable question. How did a movement that was persecuted and nearly erased manage, within a single generation, to gather and preserve its sacred writings? This is where the story of the Canon begins. Who decided what would be included in the Bible? Now comes the most dangerous question. Who decided which books would become the Bible? Was it a group meeting behind closed doors? Were certain texts deliberately hidden? Could Christianity have looked completely different? The word canon means rule or standard, but the canon did not appear overnight. The process took centuries. Long before official decisions, Christian communities were already reading certain books in worship, copying them, quoting them. Gradually, it became clear. Some texts were universally recognized, others were not. The criteria were clear. Did the book have apostolic origin or connection? Did its teaching align with Christ's message? Was it used widely across different regions? Did it agree with the already recognized scriptures? In the 4th century, church councils confirmed what had already become standard practice. They did not create the Bible. They recognized what had long been accepted. Yet another question remains. Why were some books left out? If there were criteria, then there were texts that did not meet them. In the 20th century, ancient manuscripts were discovered, including the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Peter, other apocryphal writings. And immediately the question arose, what if these were the real ones? But closer examination revealed most were written in the 2nd to 3rd centuries, much later than the New Testament Gospels. They lacked confirmed apostolic authorship, contained Gnostic ideas contradicting early Christian teaching, were not widely accepted across regions. The issue was not that they were hidden. The issue was that they did not meet the same standards already applied to other texts. If the canon had been shaped politically, we would see chaos, drastic shifts, competing versions. Instead, historical evidence shows a gradual process of recognition, not invention, but acknowledgement. And that raises an even deeper question. Why were these 27 books of the New Testament accepted everywhere? Despite persecution, distance, and cultural differences, the Roman Empire fell. Its roads grew over with grass. Its arenas turned into ruins. Medieval kingdoms disappeared from the map. Kings who called themselves eternal exist only in history books, but the book they read remained. In the 20th century, totalitarian regimes tried again to destroy it. It was confiscated. Its printing was banned. It was hidden in secret. And once again, it did not disappear. Instead, it became the most widely distributed book in human history, translated into more than 2,000 languages. One of the first major books printed after the invention of the printing press. From desert scrolls, to printing presses, to digital apps on smartphones, its journey spans more than 3,000 years. And here's the question that remains. Why did this book survive everything? Why did people try to destroy it and fail? Why did they criticize it, yet continue to read it? Why did it not become just another ancient text in a museum? Perhaps the answer lies not only in how it was written, perhaps the answer is that its story is not finished. Kings and shepherds wrote it, scholars and simple fishermen, people of palaces and people of deserts, those who won wars and those led into captivity. It was born in different cities, different cultures, different centuries, written during the rise of empires and their collapse, in times of peace and times of fear, in freedom and in chains. And despite all these voices and eras, one line runs through it all, from creation through humanity's fall to the promise of salvation and restoration. Not a broken story, not a chaotic collection, but the unfolding of one great idea. That is why the Bible is not just a book. It is a story formed over 1,500 years, a story people tried to stop, a story copied by hand for centuries, a story that cannot be erased from human civilization. And perhaps the main question is not who wrote it or how the canon was formed, but why it still speaks to people today. And if it has survived empires, bans, and millennia, perhaps its story is not over. Maybe the Bible is not just a book that people read, but a book that reads people.